What what's the sort of the connection for you between the sense of having, I guess, what you describe as sort of an emotionally absent father or distant father? Is that what you were saying, like about your father?
Yeah, I mean, he was kind.
Right.
I just didn't connect with him. He didn't connect with me.
And then from there to...
And I think he was a little homophobic in the terms of, and I use that term to mean, you know, he was afraid of touch. You can't touch your sons, you can touch your daughters. He knew how to be close to his daughters because they were the opposite sex, but he didn't know how to be close to a son because, so it sort of created, helped create the thing he was afraid of.
Right. And then from there, what was the connection from there into the sort of the fear of the masculine role models, the athletes and not being an athlete? What's the connection between those two? Does that make sense? So sort of, how did one flow into the next, I guess? Or are they just one added on top of the other?
Yeah, it's one added on top of the other. And it was, you know, your typical middle school, high school PE class, picked last for the team kind of stuff. And I made it so important that, you know, I needed to compete and succeed, that I was very shameful. I was very shamed that I wasn't succeeding at the level. And, you know, in hindsight, I don't really know how much I actually was bullied, because in my mind, it was the fear of it every day, which is matters. It does, you know, if I ever get to see my life replayed, it may be just a few incidents.
Yeah, perception is all that matters.
But it was the fear of it all the time, you know, that was just constant. And then about that time, I found pornography as a teenager, which became pretty quickly a coping mechanism to deal with stress and shame. Right. And so that it's kind of became a perfect storm.
Yeah, a conflation of all these factors, yeah. And then all of that for a while, I guess, within you, based on messages from the world you were getting, sort of equaled or equated you're gay. The message that you're gay, right? Is that it? Like all those emotional experiences you're having in terms of emotional distance,
it was
not
years,
measuring up,
right?
Sexual.
So I knew that. I mean, the first time that thought "you're gay" came to me, I was 16, and a man at a Barnes and Noble type bookstore cruised me. He touched me, a stranger, and it was shocking, but it was exciting at the same time. And I let him do it again, and it was like. And then I ran out of there, and I went home, and I remember being absolutely horrified and thrilled at the same time. Sure. Like it felt so good to have a man show interest, and it was horrifying what it meant. Does this mean I'm gay? Does this mean you know, I was, and the idea, there was nobody I would talk to about that. I certainly would not talk to my parents. There was no one I knew who I could talk to. So it was just this horrible thing. That was the first time the thought really ever came to me that I might be gay. And it was just a very lonely, frightening experience. And I held on to that secret for years. I was able to put it totally on hold during my mission.
But also in a sense it was festering then. Yeah. It's on hold, but it's like festering, which in some ways makes it worse.
And on my mission I didn't have a whole ton of really nurturing companionship relationships. In some ways there was more rejection and more criticism and
competition.
Right. Yeah. You know, and so that didn't help. From an SSA perspective, from a spiritualist perspective, yeah, that helped, but as far as getting reinforced, but it reinforced a lot of the negative stereotypes I had about men instead of changing that.
And then
so then I went through the story I just told you about college in Los Angeles and meeting Marie. And so 9 years into the marriage, I found reparative therapy and did 2.5 years there. And it changed my world. And I did have to do the work and went back to a 12-step program. And I did have to do the work of withdrawing from some pretty severe habits. But with therapy, it gave me something the 12 steps didn't, which was, okay, underneath this, why do you want to act out? What does it mean? What's the real need? And if you meet the need authentically and legitimately instead of sexually, then that actually is more satisfying. And so that started to really change my world in a very positive way. It was intense. In some ways it was painful because it was dragging up a lot of past pain. And and it was terrifying in that, okay, now my task is to go be with men authentically who I'm afraid of. You know, how am I going to start opening up and everything else? So I did, and I got to a point where I was doing everything that I could think of. I did. I should say in this process, pretty early into my reparative therapy, like 4 months in, I made a confession to my bishop, and I was excommunicated pretty quickly, and that was
interesting, because in the sense you were apologetic, it would seem, but I guess part of the process is to help you repent and change.
I mean, I knew that. I mean, it wasn't surprising because I'd clearly broken all of my covenants a number of times, but it was another experience of more rejection, more men rejecting me. And so when I was acting out, nobody knew, and now that I wasn't acting out, it was public, at least public within, you know, a certain segment of the church.